the sound when this happens. I'm going to move this over here. Have you done this before?
I have not. I've never done anything live, so this is new.
That'll be part of it. Okay. I'm going to mute this. Okay. All right, here we go. We are live, and I just want to get started. Welcome to No Gatekeeping. It is our summer live series, and it is the founder series. And I'm so glad you're here joining us today. I'm Carlin Bushman, sales strategist, business coach, and founder of Pop Academy. I lead female founders through building bold, profitable businesses with strategy, confidence, and real clarity. That sounds like a bunch of words. What does that really mean? We're going to get into that because that is kind of a universal statement, which is what I feel like when I say that. This series was born out of a need I kept hearing over and over and over again how I wish someone would just tell me the truth, like get into the realness about entrepreneurship and starting and growing businesses about and what it really takes. So that's what we're going to do here for the summer. We're going to get into like the real gritty stuff. It may get emotional, highs, lows, all the above, right? And having real conversations, honest strategies, if there is such a thing, and stories that don't really skip messy parts. So, of course, I immediately thought about Lauren today joining us, and her topic is going to be super fascinating. So, this is really exciting. If you've ever wondered whether it is time to walk away from something in your business or pivot into something new, like you've got that like nagging thing or that niggle, they call it, right? You're not alone. You're definitely not alone. Lauren gets it. She's been there, she's done it. And it happens again, right? This is not just a one-time thing. So I want to introduce Lauren. Lauren Cunningham is the founder of So Can I, a podcast and community built to support female founders. She's also the owner of a social media marketing agency and a passionate storyteller and connector, which is what I love about her so much. Lauren's journey started in accounting. Yes, I said that right. Accounting, like her reaction shows it all, right? But it quickly evolved into something more creative, more aligned, more meaningful. And today, she's here to talk about the messy and powerful process of reinvention. Lauren, thank you for being here.
Yes. Oh my goodness. Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
Well, I want to dive right in. Accounting, as we all know it, right, in the world of accounting. And for me, numbers are my love language. So when I think of accounting, I'm like, ooh, structure and details, right? And then you go into social media and creativity and community. That's a huge gap. Like, talk to me about that a little bit.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. Well, I'll kind of backtrack to college because I had no idea what I wanted to do. And so my dad was in banking at the time. And so he was like, well, you could try accounting. And I was kind of interested in business. I actually had some health issues when I was in college. So I dropped out for a semester. And I was so been out of shape about maybe graduating late. Like I couldn't even fathom, I was like, I have to graduate in the 4 years, which is so silly, like so silly. But that was kind of just my thought process. And so it happened my freshman year, the second semester. So when I came back my sophomore year, I was like, I have to pick a major because I didn't have one. I came in, I think, pre-law, but it really wasn't a real major. I think there were just a couple classes you could take. And so I ended up just kind of trying a couple different things. I took an intro to business class and really loved it. And that's when my dad was like, well, maybe try accounting. And so I did. And I was good at it. I mean, a lot of people think like it's so much math. It's really not math. You said it best. It's numbers. Like it's not doing like complex math problems. It's just kind of the study of numbers. And I enjoyed that a lot and I liked it in college, but I could never see past graduation. I was like, what am I going to do? Like I don't know that I want to sit at a desk, for 9 hours a day and crunch numbers. And tax season was always such a daunting thing. Like everybody would talk about it, as if it was like the plague. And so I'm like, I don't want to do that. And so I'd always been creative, but I don't think I ever realized it because my sister was kind of the artistic one. Like she could draw, she could paint, she could do all those things. And I don't think I ever saw that like my writing and my creative ability was there. It just was kind of masked a little bit. And so I'd had a blog while I was in college, but nothing ever really caught fire. And so I graduate college and this would have been in 2019, so about 10 months before the pandemic hit. And so I started working in public accounting and I didn't like it. I mean, it wasn't that, that it wasn't so bad. It was just that I couldn't really see myself doing it for, years and years and years. And so those 10 months before the pandemic hit, from the time I graduated, I felt like I was, really trying to swim upstream. I mean, it was really kind of miserable. I was like, I have no idea what I'm supposed to do. And you feel like you have to have everything figured out at that point. And so I ended up, like I said, I had some health problems. And so I ended up starting the Institute for Integrative Nutrition, which is a health coaching program, just kind of I have Crohn's disease. So it was just kind of to like see if I could help heal myself. And that kind of turned into my first business endeavor, which I'm happy to get into right now if you want me to. But that was sort of the switch. And then obviously the pandemic started and I couldn't, they wouldn't let me work from home and I couldn't go into the office because I'm immunocompromised. So it just worked out to where I just left that job and I was getting my MBA at the time and loved business. So I knew I knew that it wasn't totally lost, the 4 years of college, but I knew I didn't want to do accounting, but I did love business and it sparked that interest in me. And I was so glad. I remember my senior year of college, everybody was like, well, go on and get your master's in accounting. And there was just such a big part of me that was like, I don't want to do that. Like, and so I ended up getting an MBA instead, and I'm so glad because it has helped me in so many ways. But that was kind of the start of, getting out of accounting.
Well, it's so interesting you said something, and I want to dive into this for a minute. You talked about like you had to take a semester off your freshman year, right? And you're like, oh my gosh, now I'm gonna have to like double down on credits. I have to graduate in 4 years. I took a semester off. Now I'm gonna have to re-engage. I don't have a major. Like, what did that feel like? Like how yeah. Like, first of
Yeah.
all, and then you kind of laughed it off just now. And I'm just like noticing things. And I'm not a psychologist or, a psychotherapist or anything. I so respect that field. And I actually, secretly wish I would have dove a little bit deeper into psychology as maybe one of my majors. But why did you feel that pressure for the 4 years? And now you're looking back going, whatever.
Yeah, I was definitely type A. Like, I feel like I'm a recovering type A personality now. I don't feel that I really associate with that anymore. But I think, when you go through something, so just to backtrack a little bit, like I said, I have Crohn's disease. And my first semester, my freshman year, I mean, I was pretty much on like a liquid diet. I was on prednisone. I was in and out of the hospital that first semester, missing class. And I remember I had a specialist at Vanderbilt and she was like, you may have to drop out. And I remember she said that and I was like, absolutely not. Like I would never do that. And, I was in the hospital for like a week, 2 weeks before I even started college. And my parents, even to this day, they're like, we didn't even care if you started. Like we could have cared less, but like I felt like I had to, and I don't know what made me feel that way, but I did. And so then moving into that second semester, 2 days in, ended up in the hospital, was hospitalized for almost 8 weeks and had two surgeries. And it was a whole thing. So there was no way I could have done school that semester. And I think you go through something like that and it just does kind of change you. You're kind of like, okay, these things don't matter really anymore, even though I did still feel like I wanted to, graduate on time. And I think it was more so a fitting in kind of thing because obviously what had happened to me was so vastly different than most people's experience their freshman year of college. And so I think I just wanted to come back my sophomore year and be normal, and not
Mm.
even, just kind of be like, oh, I'm on this track with these people that I started with, a year ago. And so I think that was probably more it. And then also, all my friends were, they were graduating or going to graduate on time. And so I think that was more so what it was for me is wanting to
Mm.
just kind of fit in after this like insane experience had taken place.
I feel like there was, and I'm not calling this out with you, but I feel like there was some comparison syndrome already going on, right? That early age. Like I get that. Like I feel that in my heart when you're describing that. Like I'm right there with the emotions with you and feeling like the hurry up and catch up and don't want to be like an outlier, right? And don't want to miss the boat and thinking that, I don't want to be different or, whatever the case might be. Do you think that impacted your health? Like throughout some of your college years or into your MBA, some
Oh,
of the
I'm
things you
sure. Yeah, I stress is a huge trigger for me, and as it is for a lot of people with autoimmune conditions. And I remember my senior year of college, it was kind of like I guess it was like maybe February, January, February, and I had a really bad flare, and it just so happened to be the time when I was trying to decide what I was doing next, like if I was getting my master's in accounting or my master's in business. And that was a huge part in me actually choosing to get the MBA because it just, when I thought about that, because I went to Lee University, which is in Cleveland, and they had just developed an MBA program. And so the thought of like having the professors I knew with peers I already knew, it was very comfortable in a good way for me because I loved my experience in the School of Business the first time around. And so whenever I thought about doing that, I felt more peace than, going off somewhere to get my master's in accounting. And so I think that yes, absolutely, my health was impacted. And also, I think my health has been a driver of where I am today. I don't know that I would have wanted to be my own boss. It kind of was out of necessity because I do have a lot of doctor's appointments. I do have, I do have to miss. It's good that I can be, the creator of my own schedule. And so they've kind of worked hand in hand throughout my life.
Well, and then you mentioned something about your sister, and I'm not like trying to create this. I have sisters, so I get it. The sibling differential things. Like I have a sister too, which is so like I have two sisters, but my middle sister, which is the one younger than me, because I'm the oldest, she's the creative. Like she's always been the creative. She went to the Milwaukee Institute for Art Design. Like I always respected everything she's done. She writes beautifully. She's got her master's in English. Like it's just, and then she worked for a big engineering company and she was in charge of RFPs. And I always felt like that's her. I'm not creative. I'm the numbers person. And I just took on that role in the family. Like I just took that on, and the thought of writing for me and being creative. And I'm like, oh, no, no, I'm the right brain or the left brain, whatever the opposite brain is. That's me. See, I don't even know the right language for that because I've always like stood in that. And then you think, well, wait, I am creative, maybe not in the same way. So it sounds like you had some of those aha moments early. Like you're thinking, I do love to blog. I actually, that's my outlet through all this numbers analysis. I do love. So share a little bit more about that, and how's that impacted or has it impacted like your relationship with your sister or some of the things that you guys might even share these days?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So I'm the middle of two or three girls. And so I have an older sister who,
Okay.
took a very traditional, she's a nurse practitioner. So she's always very stable job, very, very traditional path. My younger sister just graduated college with a degree in wildlife. And so
Gosh.
totally different. Yeah. She's actually this summer in Arkansas catching bats. So, I mean, like totally different.
Oh
Like
my
she's
gosh.
studying bats with a graduate student. And so, yeah, we're all very, very different if you can't tell. And so, yeah, I mean, growing up, I think it was great though, because my parents, I was actually having this conversation a few weeks ago with my mom. I read the book The Let Them
Oh,
Theory by Mel Robbins. And
okay.
there's a whole section in it about parents and basically how to, there are obviously a lot of people struggle. I have it somewhere. I think it's behind. No, actually, I think my mom has it. But yeah, so there's this whole section in the book about, handling your relationship with your parents because as we all know, a lot of people's relationship with their parents are very strained due to a lot of different reasons. But luckily, I feel like I had the best parents in the world. And so I was reading that thinking, first of all, feeling, very sad for people who had to experience, strained relationships with their parents, but also just thinking like my parents never tried to like live vicariously through me. They never tried to push what they, I mean, they obviously are there to guide me and my sisters and like wanted us to, wanted to help us in any way that they could. But they were never like, I think you should do this, or I think like they were just there to lend a hand or to give an idea, and so I think that's a huge part of probably why all three of us are very different. I had a podcast guest on, it's been a couple months ago, and she said her mom was a free range mom. And I just loved that because it really kind of embodied like I feel like my parents were kind of just like, do what you want to do, like figure out what your thing is. And so it is interesting though to look at all of us and kind of like see our differences because we are so incredibly different, but we're all so close. We're a very tight-knit family. And so when it comes to creative ability, I think we all have it. I think everybody has creative ability, like in some way. I think we were made to create, created to create, and so I think it just sometimes takes a second to find what yours is. And for me, writing has always been an outlet for me. I never thought that I would be a podcast host because I think that definitely is a creative outlet. I mean, you're producing a show every week, and so I never saw that for myself, but writing was always a creative outlet. I wrote a lot through my health crisis and had really hoped that I could write a book, which maybe I will one day. But when I was in college, which I don't think I've really told this story ever, but I had gotten back back into reading. And I loved that was around the time that Big Little Lies had come out. I don't know if you watched
Mm.
or read it.
Oh yeah,
So
yeah.
that was like the first, I mean, like in high school, I'd read like Nicholas Sparks and books like that, but like I hadn't really gotten into like adult women's fiction. And I was like, oh my gosh, there's books out here that are like this good. I love this. And so I started reading a lot and I was like, I think I should write a book. And so in like my spare time in college, I just kind of pieced together. I mean, it never, obviously never like, it's not a real book any, now, but it was such a creative outlet for me and also just like such a could thing to be like, oh, I did that. Like I could do that if I wanted to, And so I think even though I was so involved in the numbers portion of, like the accounting part, I also always had some sort of creative outlet.
That's very cool. You just reminded me. I have such a dear friend who is, she hasn't shared with me lately, but that is one thing that she was starting to do is every couple days or every 30 minutes, a couple times a week or whatever it was, she would sit down and continue writing this book that she's writing, and I haven't asked her about it in months. So you've just reminded me to ask her about that. And, when I look at even, you're right, the creativity that we all have, and I feel like we collaboratively, and maybe this isn't always the case, but we have this label that gets attached to us. And it's partly because I say it. Like I'm like, I'm a numbers person. I love spreadsheets, blah, blah, blah. But then on the other side of that, then I don't want to discount the creativity, right? So part of like when I get the opportunity to talk to incredible female founders and things like that, I feel like that show Queen's Gambit, right? So we're bringing up some things that are popular culture, right? Pop culture stuff. And that movie Queen's Gambit, when I talk to somebody, I literally can see it as if it's a chessboard, like up here, and I can put all the pieces together and it gives me this great vision of their business. I'm like, oh, this is where you are. If we put this in and do this and tweak this and do this, you're gonna feel really good. Not only are you gonna feel confident and grounded, but you're also gonna see some successes, right? And I feel that in my bones, like really deep inside, and I think that is probably where I lean into the creativity. And I love that you shared about your sisters. Like that's so cool for me to hear. And what was the word again that you used? Free range, free
Free
range.
range. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Am
yeah.
I too old to be free range? My kids are like 28 to 34 years old at this point. So, but I feel like I want to embrace like even free range grandma. Like maybe I could
Yeah.
be a free range nana or something like that. Maybe I'll tell, once I have grandchildren, maybe I'll say, can we use free range? Because I really like that. That's a great idea.
Yeah, no, it is. It's such a beautiful thing to be able to encourage somebody to be exactly who they want to be, and who they are. And I think that, like I said, I was just blessed with parents that really, encourage that in us.
Well, and that's what you do, right? You really work on building, like you've built the brand really about telling other women's stories. Like, how do you do that?
It's so funny because like I said earlier, I never would have thought. I mean, I think I had probably like quiet dreams of maybe having a podcast because I was a podcast listener. I was kind of an early adopter when it came to podcasts, but I was never like, never thought like, oh, that's going to be me one day having like a successful podcast. And so when it came down to it, it just felt like a natural progression in my career. And I think now I'm able, this week actually is our 3-year anniversary of the podcast. And so I'm able to kind of see now that it really comes down to storytelling. Like that is what I love to do. I think that's why I love books. I think that's why I really love like TV shows or movies. I love to just sit down. I've always been like a one-on-one person. I don't love
Mm,
being in like a huge group of people, but I love
mm.
being like one-on-one with people and talking about them and getting to know them. I'm not huge on small talk, but I like to actually like, talk to people. And so I really think it just came down to this need for storytelling. And I think that was something that was kind of lacking in my life. I was a solo entrepreneur, at the time. And so I wasn't around a ton of people when I started the podcast. And so it sort of just came out of that need for community. And then also I think just a desire to be a storyteller.
And how, I mean, let's talk about that sitting behind a microphone by yourself with your desktop in those days, right? And when you started early, like share some of that because I take for granted community. And I know I do. Like, I feel like if I want to pick up the phone or get into a Voxer group or something, like I can call somebody on the drop of it, like whatever, like easily. And I had like a really challenging day on Monday. And I think it was lack of sleep. I had a lot of personal things going on, as we all do, but I don't want to discount it either. Sometimes I'm like, yeah, everybody does. But like, no, it was like freaking hard. Like it was hard on Monday. And I had some business stuff that I was dealing with. And I literally just shut my computer down. I was not productive. I'm like, what's wrong with me? I'm not productive. And I don't like that feeling. It's very like triggering for me. And it
Hmm.
was a Monday. And I'm like, of all days, I need to be productive. Like, and I'm not. And I have this laundry list of just dusk mess going on. And I just shut my computer down and decided just take a walk outside. I just had to get away. And I'm like, I'm not doing anything anymore. Right. So I mean, I think that's part of it. How do you handle that? Like, what do you do? Do you have bad days? Like, what do you do about this stuff? Or do you feel lonely sometimes? And like I said, I feel like I take for granted that I know I can pick up the phone and probably call or message somebody. But Monday, I didn't do that. Like, and when I did, I wasn't like nice. I was like word vomiting and venting. Like, I don't like that about myself.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, yes, I do have bad days, but I think if anything this year, and I don't know why this year, I turned 28 this year, and I just feel like I have really, for the first time, kind of disassociated my career from me as a person.
Mm.
And it's been a weird shit. Like, I don't know, I can't say what I've done to do that. I have no idea, but I really, I try to control what I can control and then leave the rest up to whatever. It's like I'm going to work as hard as I can. Of course, there are bad days. And yes, you explaining your day on Monday, like I
Mm.
hate feeling not productive because when you are the business owner, your productivity is what makes money. Like there is no other, I mean, that is what makes you money. And so I feel that so much. And I think that, the bad days, obviously, they are going to come. I just try not to get too down on myself. And obviously sometimes I do, but I really have tried this year to just kind of disassociate myself from my business in a healthy way, obviously. But like if I have a bad day, that doesn't mean that I'm a bad person. That doesn't mean that, I'm tied to the productivity of my business. Have dinner. Usually, if I have a snack, I feel better, honestly.
Mm.
That is like a huge, I'll be like upstairs on my computer working, and I'm just like, I can feel the frustration coming, and I'm
Mhm.
like, I need to go eat. I need to go eat lunch because I don't have a standard like lunchtime that I take. I'm
Mhm.
like, I need to go eat lunch. And usually, eating lunch, taking a walk, seeing a friend, you mentioned community, and I think that's so big. I remember, during COVID, it was just such a weird time. I know COVID was weird for everybody, but I had just graduated, so I felt like I was finally getting kind of my sea legs from, being post grad. And then all of a sudden the country shut down, and having a compromised immune system, I had to take it a little bit more seriously than the average person. And so that time was really difficult. And again, I think that's why the podcast was probably born because I started my first business during that time. So I was developing recipes for fitness apps, which is so random. Not a lot of community really in that space because there weren't really, I didn't know anybody else doing that. And so that was a huge reason why I started the podcast too, because I was just like, I feel like I don't have a great community right now. Had great friends, but they weren't business owners. There were things you just couldn't, they couldn't relate to with me. And so I was like, maybe I could start a community. And so that's kind of where the podcast was born out of.
Do you still write recipes?
Not anymore. I actually gave that part up in my business probably a year and a half ago. So it's not been, I mean, it's been somewhat recent. I do love to cook, but it had gotten to be, which I'm happy, I know we'll probably get into about, reinventing, but it wasn't extremely scalable, or at least I was probably too young and dumb to really figure out how to scale it at that point. I was 23 years old. So like it had gotten old and I kind of saw profit in other areas of my business as I kind of began to shift. So I don't write recipes anymore, but I do love to cook still.
That's so good to hear. Yeah, I'd like to find your recipes. I love to cook too. So I'd love to find your recipes. And I just read and listened to a podcast yesterday about the season we're in, really since the full moon last night, right? So they called it the strawberry moon for anyone who's interested. And it was really interesting that they said the podcast that I was listening to, and she seemed really, really well informed, like very educated about we're in the season of like almost planting and nesting. And so she really leaned into, if you like to cook or for those who are considering children, it's a really fertile season right now, so all of that was all encompassing. And I just thought, oh, that's so beautiful to me. That actually just spoke to my heart to say, oh, I just want to really lean into it. So when you mentioned cooking, that's what I was thinking about. So knowing some of these things, right? A year and a half ago from the recipes, what you're doing today, like how do you know if it's the right time to pivot again? Like how do you know? Like sometimes I feel like I have to really stay the course because that comes with my like structured background, right? My corporate experience, the structured, right? You like graduate college, you get a job, you like climb the ladder, it's all like, you get married or not get married. But in my case, I got married, I got divorced, got married again. So there's that. Which is like life, right? Single mom for quite a while. And you learn through all of these things, and then you realize life's not linear at all. So when do you know, like, should you stay the course? What's aligning, making a decision with your heart? You mentioned you realized it wasn't profitable. So I feel like that was a connection a little bit more with your mind. You couldn't figure out like how you would scale it. So was that heart head aligned? Like, how do you know? Like, what's your
Yeah.
perspective on that?
Well, it can be, I mean, it's probably one of the most challenging things I feel like in business is knowing when to pivot or to move on. You don't ever want to be known as the person who doesn't see things through, and I think that was kind of what was like weighing heavy on me because at 23, I left my job in accounting to pursue health and wellness. When I started out, I was a health coach. I wasn't even developing recipes. So that was even a little bit of a shift in my business. And so I already at age 23 had done something kind of off the cuff, a little bit off the wall, strange, not super normal. And so then when it came time to shift again, I'm like, oh my gosh, and there are still to this day people I'm in a very small town, they'll be like, well, how's your health business going? And it's like, it's been 3 years, since I was even doing anything remotely, with health and wellness, but, or really more like 4 or 5 years since I was a health coach. But that's still, you're always kind of known as that first thing that you do. And we are known for better or for worse, we're known for what we do, what our jobs are. We're always associating people with that. And so it can be really, really hard. But I think when it came time to kind of transition from recipes to social media, I know it sounds like such a strange, bizarre change, but it really didn't feel that way to me because it was so natural. Like the progression has just always been very natural. I got an opportunity. My sister was actually my older sister was the one that was like, hey, this business needs somebody to do their social media. And I told them that you might be interested. And so I had been taking pictures and videos of the recipes that I was developing. So it was sort of I was already creating content. So it was a natural progression to that. And so I ended up retaining all of my recipe development clients. And so for about a year, I did both. I tried to do the social media and the recipe development because I just was kind of, again, like a little bit stubborn. And also, you know, it seemed the social media thing, it seemed stable-ish, but also I was like, well, I would love to have this extra income too, why not? And so I tried to do both for as long as I could, but it just got to the point where I really couldn't do both anymore. And so that was kind of the shift out of recipe development. But I mean, I think it's going to be hard to get your, heart and your head kind of matched up on those
Oh,
decisions. I mean, yeah, it's so hard. I think that a lot of times, emotionally it feels like you're failing, to change things up because something wasn't working, right. But I'm reading this book, and if you haven't read it, I actually have it beside me. It's called 38 Letters from JD Rockefeller to his son. I don't know if
oh,
you've read it. You need to
mm-mm.
read it. It's literally just 38 letters that he's written his son on success and how to be successful. And so, I think that this book has been like just every letter. I'm like, oh, this is just speaking to me. But on the back of the book, it says, "Don't be afraid to give up the good to go for the great." And I think that's such a, sometimes when we are, you know, these opportunities are presented to us and we're like, should we pivot? Should we not? It's so easy to stay comfortable, even if it's not working, rather than to take a risk and make a change and go for something that could be better. And obviously, I'm not saying you should take, crazy amounts of risk, but sometimes you do kind of just have to take that step and that leap and hope that your mind catches up because sometimes it can be a little bit challenging. But I think I realized it's harder to stay stuck than it is to like it feels worse to stay stuck than it does to just take a little bit of a risk.
I love that you're sharing so much of this. And I really applaud you that you recognize this so early in your career or in your journey, right? I think so many of us, myself specifically, look back and say, okay, I don't want to have any regrets. So how do I live today to be the best day? And how do I live the next, year? And I'm doing this exercise where, I look at a year, I look at 5 years, and I look at 10 years, right? And what really matters and how your life evolves, right? And your life will continue to evolve as all of us, right? I heard something on my morning meditation today, which is so simple. And it is the only consistency is change. And I'm thinking, that is so simple and so like powerful. And yes. So I think leaning in, and you're right. Like sometimes I think about like, who cares if I change again? Like, who cares? Like, really, like, I need to remember to let go of what others are going to really think, because at the end of the day, it's me that's looking at myself, and some of those things. So it's working that muscle. And like you said, it's hard to make that head heart, alignment. So I'm really working on my heart making decisions for me more than always my head.
Mhm.
Because I have a tendency to be like 90% head, 10% heart. And I wonder why it's not working. But I got to tell you, I am feeling like I'm going through some changes right now. And it is like so scary. It's scary.
Yeah, no, yeah, I totally agree. I am also experiencing some change in my business right now, and it is scary. But, to go back to kind of like being scared of what people think of you, when I was again fortunate to have great parents, but my dad would always, I remember the first time I kind of, maybe was, I can't remember the situation, but maybe was scared to do something or because someone would be watching or whatever. I remember he was like, "Why do you think people are thinking about you?" And I was like, "Oh, okay." He's like, I mean, like, no, but everybody is so caught up in their own, life. Of course, maybe they might see you and, think about you for a split second, but how many, and if they are thinking about you, then that's on them that they're spending their life thinking about you? So sometimes you do have to remove your ego from it because I think we all think that, oh gosh, everybody's looking at me and everybody's waiting for me to, take a misstep or to do something wrong. And it's like, nobody's even paying attention to you? So that kind of makes it a little bit better.
Oh my gosh, I love that, and it's so funny you say that because I golf and I like playing golf, and I have a great community of women that I get to play with on a regular basis. But I'm not good. Let's not kid ourselves. I'm not good. So I'll say, "Oh my god, I can't believe that shot or whatever," and my husband will say to me sometimes, or others will say to me, "Hey, no one cares about your game. By the way, no one cares about your game. Sorry, not sorry." They only care about their own, actually. And I think that's so true, like you're saying. I think that I love talking about this, and we could go on for hours and hours, I'm sure. There's so much power in like permission, right? There's so much power in permission and to change our minds, to evolve, trust what's next. So thank you for sharing all of this with us, Lauren. And thank you for doing your first live, right? So this is
Yes.
exciting, like
Yeah.
something new. So I'm really happy that you were willing to join us on our summer series and kind of no gatekeeping and just sharing all the stuff behind the scenes. Do you have anything exciting that is coming up? I know you talked a little bit about different things. Do you want to share anything exciting that
Yeah,
you have coming up?
sure. Yeah, like I said, a couple changes in my business, all good things, honestly. It's scary at first, but again, if you just trust it's going to work out, I think it's, you're going to have a much better mindset. But taking on some new clients, hopefully in the next couple months, which is really exciting. I love the opportunity to get to work with other people, and so I'm very excited about that. And then hopefully more of the same with the podcast. It's really growing at the last couple months have just been incredible. I've seen incredible episode over episode growth, and I just hope to do more of the same with that. So I'm excited.
That's great. And we'll put all the details about your podcast in the show notes as well. And what you've just also made everyone hopefully realize is you got to play the long game. How long have you been doing the podcast?
3 years this
Yeah.
week. Yeah.
Yeah. So you can't just do 10 episodes and be like, well, I guess it's not going to work. So it's great. Well, thank you again. Thank you so much for connecting. We're going to go ahead and put the link to your podcast in our notes. Of course, you'll be able to have access to all of that. And this is really what No Gatekeeping is all about: real stories, smart strategies, founders who are willing to share a bit about themselves a little bit more and, that journey and what it actually looks like to build something. So I just ask everyone who's joined us today, make sure you subscribe to our channel so you don't miss next week's episode. And of course, if you love this one and you love what we're going to be talking about in our summer series, which may extend longer than summer, share with somebody else who would be interested. Use this as a point of conversation. which I think is always wonderful. As Lauren mentioned, it's great to have these intimate one-on-one conversations. It really does make entrepreneurship and owning your own business just a little more precious. So thanks again, Lauren, and we'll see everyone next Thursday, same time, same place.
Yes, thank you for having me.